information. We are experiencing extensive delays, and this is due to animals in the.
Hi, Louise. I'm going to be on mute. Yeah, that was the train announcement.
Okay. Animals on the track. Is that kangaroos or?
Yeah, I don't know. It's at least better than the last delay. A month ago, there was like some fire, like building on fire that was causing massive delays as well.
I see. Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so
Hello,
yeah, I'll be listening in,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'll be able to answer any questions.
Okay. I think we're still waiting for a couple more folks to join.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Yi.
Hi, Luis.
Yeah, we're giving, I think we're missing a couple folks. We're giving them a couple more minutes and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Akash. Okay, Tori message he's not going to be able to make it. So let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So I think we've got quorum now. We've got so let's get started. Oh, we're missing Feynman, right? Yeah, we're missing Feynman. Yeah, one of the topics to discuss today is the website. Let's give one more minute and we'll get started. All right. In the meantime, I'm gonna add attendance. Okay, I see Feynman entering. All right. Hello, Feynman. Hello, everyone. I think we've got quorum now. Susan's unable to drive the meeting today, so I'll be driving it. So bear with me. So I think the first thing we have in the agenda is the announcement that the Ratify website is on, ratify.dev. Appreciate all the work here from Feynman, from Sajay, Lucky, and Bridget to sort of make this happen. So we have a website repo now as well, where we'll be checking in all the content we want to display in the website. I think one of the first things we want to do is migrate a lot of our documentation into the website. So stay tuned for plans there, but really appreciate the work here. Feynman, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, it's just a information sharing, but if you can open that link, I can spend maybe just 1 or 2 minutes to quickly go through the new website and share anything we will add for the next step. Yeah. Okay, so this is the new website built on an open source framework, Docserverse, and which is contributed by a volunteer. So she's not in this meeting, unfortunately, but I can quickly go through the framework. So as you can see from this website landing page, yeah, it's kindly very simple. We plan to improve the interactive design in the future. If we have a designer who can help us to improve it, we can also find volunteers to help with that. But this is not the top high priority. So I think the most priority for the website is to, can you go to the docs? Yeah, as you can see, we have 3 step pages, docs, blog, and playground. So,
oh, here.
Yeah, you can click. Yeah, actually, I have a PR to update the link. If you click docs, I think you should jump to the Ratify introduction page. So I think the next step is to migrate the documentation from the Ratify source code repo to the website repo and maintain the content and make sure it is up to date with the latest release of Ratify. Yeah, and the second page is the blog. Yeah, I just wrote the first blog on this website and use notation to sign and ratify to verify, and with an public container registry. This is just an example of a blog post. We can continue to create new blog posts on this page. The third page is an external resource, which is a playground to start the Ratify and Kubernetes resources in a browser. So if users wanted to try Ratify in their browser without provisioning any resources, any cloud resources, they can have a try with this environment. I just add a link to the menu. Yeah. And can you go back to the Ratify website? Yeah, so on the right side, you will see that we will have a version control functionality. Currently, this version is not right. I sent a PR to update the version to RC.5. So if we can merge that PR, this version will be changed. So in the future, we can introduce version control to the documentation. And we will also introduce the built-in search capability to the website. So other links are related to the community-related links like Slack, GitHub, and Twitter. Yeah, it's just a simple website, but it has very fundamental functionalities, at least.
Nice. You can also switch between dark and bright mode.
Yeah, and we also integrate Ratify for PR reviewing, PR preview, and it will also check if there is any broken link we bring to the content. It will remind that this is not allowed, and you should fix it.
Oh,
we
that's
have
very
a broken link check. Yeah,
that's very cool. So it can detect broken links.
Yeah, it can be detected in the CI. We have a Ratify CI to check. If we introduce any broken links, the CI will fail, and it will remind where the broken links come from.
Oh, very cool. Thank you, Feynman. I mean, this is definitely a great start. I was looking at the PR that you sent, and Yeah, let's chat on when we can start migrating some of the docs and advertising the website externally through Slack and through Twitter and other social media. Start getting some traffic.
Yeah, and I had a discussion with Zach. I think after notation V1 release, I think Zach will have more bandwidth to work on the Ratify documentation, and I think we should prepare a comprehensive documentation for Ratify before Ratify V1. And I think Joshua is also working on it, so we will have 2 resources to help maintain the Ratify open source upstream work and also the Azure CSSC documentation.
Yeah, Joshua has a PR out for, he restructured a bit the document, the documentations. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that, but yeah, no, this is very cool, Feynman. Appreciate the work.
Thanks, that's all.
Sweet. Thank you, Feynman. All right, so going back to the, so nice. So we got the website, the web repo set up. We do have a new person joining the call, Yun Cheng. I don't know if you wanna introduce yourself. As a reminder, don't mention any internal projects or anything internal. This is a community call, so yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself, Yun Cheng?
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Junjun, and from now, I'm planning to like join the project and see if I can make some contribution to the Ratify project. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to join.
Awesome. Welcome, Yun Cheng. Yeah, looking forward your contributions. Thanks. All right. So first presentation item. I've got Yi and Susan for a proposal for new milestones RC7.1 and post GA. Yi, do you want to chat about this?
Yeah. Thanks, Luis. Actually, this is just a proposal, so I think it will be good we can discuss in the committee meeting. A bit background is that during triage the issues, it seems that RC6 is the latest one. We don't have other milestones. However, there could be issues that needed to be planned for the release coming after RC6, and also some issues if we foresee that it will not be in the V1 scope, it will be for the later phase. So maybe we can consider adding other milestone. So currently, I see we have RC6 and also future, right? I didn't remember clearly. Maybe we can go to the code repo and check it.
Yes, so we do have only two. We have two releases. Sorry, we only have RC. We've been kind of going milestone to milestone, but I think you do have a great point here. We should probably have a little bit more structure in terms of what are we gonna see in future. Sort of what is our roadmap from now until we release the first GA. So how do you want to handle this? Do you want me to create a new milestone, RC7 and V1, and start proposing items for each, taking into consideration that each milestone is gonna be about a month long. That's the cadence that we've been going with.
We plan to have the V1 in August, right?
Yes.
So basically,
Yeah,
now
so-
we are reaching the end of June.
Mhm.
So consider 1 month cadency. So we will have 2 milestone, right? One is V1 and another one before V1, right? So it could be RC7.
Right now, as it is, we have milestone 6 ending around July 21st. We just released RC5. I mean, we potentially have a milestone. We could, depending on where in August we want, we could see this shipping. We can probably have like one more RC7 that's a month, and then maybe have stable now on September.
Yeah. Yes. For the V1, we could only include the bug fixing from the previous release candidate, right? So I do check the issues. It seems one issue could be done maybe after RC6, however, need to be included in V1. That issue is what's being created, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so if everyone agrees that we can have one more release candidate before V1, and for V1 we only consider some critical bug fixings, no more features or improvements in V1.
Yeah, that sounds good. So right now, if we keep the monthly cadence, we got RC7 shipping mid-August, and then we can have a, let's say if it's only bug fixing for the B1 afterwards, we could potentially have that be maybe 2 weeks and ship around the first week of September. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. How about any comment from other participants?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Akash, did you talk about the discussion we had in the hallway, or?
No, I haven't. I was gonna bring
I think
that
you should kind of share your thoughts.
Yeah, so what, in terms of big features, what needs to make it in before V1? In particular, I was thinking in terms of HA work, what is the whole story supposed to be solved before we hit V1? And if that's the case, then, and we're saying RC7 is going to be a pure bug fix only, does that mean RC6 needs to land all the HA work? And in terms of like backward support after V1 cut, there's Sajid was mentioning there's like a burden of responsibility on us to maintain V1 support even past patch releases for V1. So like what's like the strategy for like maintaining our existing stuff, existing features that are currently behind feature flags that are going to kind of deprecate away some of the existing functionality, like Bin is introducing the OPA Rego policy provider, and that's going to be the one moving forward. But if we GA with the config policy provider that's currently there still around, I think we would still have to have some sort of dual support going forward. So how do we like tackle those type of issues?
So yeah, so I guess yeah, what we're saying is we should make a decision whether we deprecate the config-based policy validation prior to V1, right?
So I actually have a couple of points to that, which is we are at a point where we are relatively feel comfortable about the experience, right? The monthly cadence was good when we wanted to kind of like rapidly change. I think the one main thing that's missing is the HA and maybe the Rego policy.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a monthly cadence, or we park it for like 8 weeks and say that RC7 will come in September with everything, and then we close on that? Or do you want to have more? Another minor thing is this came from the OCI learning, which is there's a problem if we tag things as RC.7 versus RC7 without a dot. It how Golang picks up the versions and things like that depends on that. So maybe that's a minor thing, but I'm digressing here. So I think if September is 1.0, then RC7 is more about landing HA, or is it about landing Rego? And once we kind of cut 1.0, there's only going to be patch releases on that, is my understanding, until anything major happens. Because that's also what we want others to snap with, right? Like maybe update AKS. We don't want AKS to take RC7. We probably ask AKS to take 1.0 directly.
Right. Yeah, there might be other. So from that perspective of what we know today, I think HA and Rego are sort of the big ticket items remaining. There might be, I don't know, the experiences that different companies are building internally, if they might have additional requirements,
right?
That we might need to sort of incorporate prior to the V1.0.
Yeah.
So we would need to have a sort of input from, I mean, the two big contributors that are currently doing Amazon and Microsoft, like a say of, say, we need this as well.
Okay. So do you want to open an issue, like get feedback, like,
yep,
this is what RC7 means, and then we can, because we would like to release it monthly, but we decide to not release it monthly if other providers want to implement it. Yeah, I shouldn't have thought only about AKS. You're right.
right.
I think getting feedback is important.
Yeah, I think the other one that we discussed and that we might want to have is whether we want to have the certificate store as a pluggable model instead of, I think that we wanted to do some reformatting there so that, like, you know, every time we have to update ORAS or we update, because we need to rebuild. So I think there was conversation about making that pluggable.
I was jokingly telling Akash that I hope we don't have to go up to RC9. That is great. Yeah, so let's see if we can, if there are 3 or 4 big things that we want to achieve, let's only have maybe 2. I would recommend maybe 1 or 2 more RCs, and then focus on only bug fixes after that. Right. Or stays the RCs depending on features, maybe a flip in model.
Yeah. The HA one is going to be interesting because we might want to, like, I think we might want a couple of weeks for baking, because we might get feedback in terms of performance, or so once we start once different people start stress testing using HA, there might be some bug fixes or things.
Okay, so the alternate would be to do HA as a 1.1.
Yes, I mean, there's also different layers to HA, right? Like we have sort of the in-memory part, and then we have also like the sort of the ORA store part. I don't know how the explorations with that have gone. Akash might be able to chat about that, but might be something where we can potentially include some layers of it on V1. I don't know, Akash, do you have any insight there as to how much more work do you foresee there, and is there, and including like validation, including stress testing it?
Yeah, so I've been focused just on the whole Redis-based and in-memory unification of the caches. I haven't even gotten to the whole PVC model with the OCI store. So, because with that, we have to discuss like what's going to be the open source approach for setting up kind of some sort of NFS instance in the cluster, and then using a PV with that. And then of course, each cloud provider is going to have their own way that they provision those persistent volumes. So that I've gotten a very basic prototype working, but nothing that's robust, and certainly no stress testing or anything there. And we don't have like a standardized performance test framework, which I feel like we've been lacking for quite a while. And a lot of the scenarios we've been exploring, they come back to, okay, well, like, what can we support now? And it's still a little bit of a question mark because everything's in flux and keeps changing. So that's another area of investment that we need to do before we're fully confident in that capability for HA. So
we've discussed having, so it does look like we still have ways to do for HA. We've discussed before including all of this work as part of an experimental flag so that customers try it out at their own risk. So could we see a V1 where we basically ship HA as with an experimental flag so that we can formally say, okay, you know what, this is not fully validated, it's not fully complete, but try it out so that we can actually get some preliminary feedback as well.
yeah, I think that's like that's probably feasible, especially the whole Redis/Dapper integration part for the in-memory caches. I think that for sure we can feature flag and have that on V1. If I'm optimistic, maybe we can also squeeze in the PV work, the persistent volume work for the OCI store, but I just haven't looked into that yet. I've kind of been focusing in on the first part of the Redis-based implementation. So.
Would this be okay for the different cloud providers? It might be good to get feedback from Yi Feynman, also any Amazon representations.
And
I have yeah, go ahead, okay.
Oh no, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I remember that we have an issue related to scaling, right? So what we just talked about, actually we have two implementation. One is in memory, right? Another is using Redis, right? So I think for V1, we should Ratify should support the scaling multiple instance. So, and we also had a meeting previously discuss this HA scaling support, right? And also the scaling target we want to meet, right? So we want to support different provider for a certain target that's related to scaling, but we need input from different providers. That's what's the performance requirement to the scaling target to V1, right? So this part we are missing now. Maybe we can, because today we don't have many provider join. Maybe we can find a way that to collect this scaling target requirement. But if not, we can at least, as we discussed previously, we can at least test what is the current performance, what is current the data when we use different implementation, I mean Redis or in memory, right? We can share the result to cloud providers so that they can get the data to see whether it meets their requirements. So I think scaling we should support, but I'm not sure the HA we just discussed how much work they are connected. Maybe some additional work we can post the V1. Maybe some basic work we can, or we should land it in V1 to avoid any potential breaking changes later. So any thoughts?
I mean, what we're saying is that, I mean, we like cloud providers could still provide, like if we have all of this HA work in a feature flag, like different cloud providers could still try out releases and could try out, give us feedback and sort of polish the experience. I think what we're, I think that the thing here is we don't wanna basically compromise or account for a specific experience, a specific on V1 when there might be a need to have feedback from the different customers using the feature. Does that make sense? Like AKS or E or AWS could still use HA, but they would actually have, like they would use it through this feature flag. And then based on feedback, we could like improve on it and then ship it formally as a, I don't know, like a version later than V1.
For the for the HA, we have an issue. I think I created. The title is scaling. So for that issue, which milestone we mark?
You have an issue? Do you want me to go to that?
Yeah. Scaling. No. Yeah, maybe I need to find out later. I think at least the V1 we should support the multiple instance. And as you mentioned, we could put a feature flag, but I'm not sure. Yeah, this one. Okay.
Regarding the HA deployment, or we say HA support, should it be designed to be cloud agnostic naturally? I certainly see that any Kubernetes application, when installing with Helm chart or Kubernetes operator, they require users to configure any cloud specific or any vendor specific configurations when installing an HA version. So I think this is a cloud agnostic feature for users to enable. For example, in Kyverno, if we set 3 replicas in their deployment, I think it will be naturally in an HA mode. So I don't understand that this feature will be related to or specific to any vendors and providers.
There's one component where it is vendor specific, and that's when you have to provision the persistent volume, because that's the CSI driver.
PVC.
Yeah, so that component of HA, which is very still in discovery mode, that one is going to depend on the cloud provider, depending on whatever CSIs are installed in the cluster. I agree that I think we'd need to have like an open source CSI that we can rely upon, and Ratify will work for that. But I think in all reality, people are going to be using Ratify with their external cloud provider, and they're going to have specific setups per cloud provider for those persistent volumes. So we need to figure that out too.
I think we can state that there's a prerequisite that you should have an available Kubernetes CSI, a standard CSI, storage interface for Ratify to consume. If users can provide a CSI, then they will have available PVs in their cluster.
Yeah,
think we
so-
can,
so I think
define the
this-
standard interface for
So
storage.
just to speak to this, I mean, it does seem like this is a whole experience that needs a little bit more thinking and more design, right? So what we're saying is, let's get some of that feedback as well, right? From the different cloud providers, kind of what are the requirements? What are we gonna require them to configure through Helm? Like all of these things. It does seem very tight to try to fit the whole persistent volume support into V1. I think a lot of this needs to get. We need some feedback in terms of performance, in terms of the different configurations from different cloud providers, all of that. That's the concern here, I think, trying to get us tied into having an experience for V1 that we might ultimately not be very happy because we try to rush this in. We can do it. We can enable it. We can enable what we have through an experimental flag, get feedback, and then sort of solidify the experience in a later release. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, please, Damon.
Yeah, if we want to get some feedback from other cloud providers, I think the most straightforward way is to reach out to AWS maintainers like Jimmy or other users from AWS and get their feedback.
Right.
At least AWS is the most is the biggest integration in their product.
Right. Yeah. I believe Jimmy. So Jimmy is currently a maintainer, but he's reached out. So that he doesn't want to be a maintainer. So we're trying to reach out to other folks in AWS to get representation on this cause. But yeah, I mean, ultimately they are recommending Ratify, or Amazon is recommending Ratify on their initial shipped version. So I feel like there is going to be interest from different cloud providers to make sure that this HA experience is good for everyone. So it looks like we might need to have some more conversation on HA. Do we want to use this issue that Yi opened to drill down a little bit, have more conversation in terms of the scenarios we specifically want, and how do we want to surface it, whether we want experimental flag or do we want to do a mix? Okay.
Yeah, I think because I created the issue, so if we can discuss under this issue, that will be good. So
right.
okay.
So let's use this issue to continue the conversation. I think it would be good to drill down a little bit more into specific scenarios. How do we want to surface this for V1? Like, which ones do we want for V1? How do we want to surface it? Whereas we want to have some under experimental flag or like, etc. And so, yeah, let's use this issue to discuss.
Yeah, just a quick question. That the Redis solution, this implementation, so it takes more time, right? And as we just discussed, there are several issues like CSI, some other issues. So based on the timeline, it's not possible to have a stable feature based on the timeline, right? So that's we need more time, and we think maybe it could be better that we can use a feature flag for it.
Right. The other sort of conversation that's been had is there might be a need to have a good security drill down on whatever method we use for for persistent volume, right? Cache has been prototyping Dapper, and that might take care of it, some of it, but it might be good to have some conversations as well. I don't know if Dapper does the encryption, Akash.
Yeah, so I've been exploring Dapper and actually have a proposed implementation out in PR form. So Dapper has a lot of things that we get for free. And one of the biggest concerns that I had with going with a direct Redis client inside of Ratify is that we need to be able to store registry credentials inside the unified memory cache. And Redis is built so that the assumption is that when you install Redis, you're installing it in a secure environment, and all actors who have access to Redis are trusted. And if we're storing credentials in there, I don't think I think we need to have some form of encryption or some form of partitioning of the data to make sure that another application using Redis is not going to be able to access those same cache keys. So there were a few options to get around this. One was to just not cache the credentials in a centralized cache, but that has some pretty severe performance implications in terms of external plugins specifically, because external plugins, the way that it's written right now, we really cannot share an in-memory cache with the main Ratify process. So I started looking into encrypting the actual data at rest in Redis. And it looks like Dapper itself supports that. So you can provide it a secret in Kubernetes, and then it uses that key to encrypt and decrypt on the fly. So we wouldn't even need to implement that support, because if you add encryption support natively in Ratify, we're going to have to deal with, rotating the key, and how do you handle that? And they already have a lot of that implementation built in. So that's like one big win in the Dapper column. The other one is MTLS between Redis instance and Ratify. We're already doing that with Gatekeeper. So from a security standpoint, we'd probably have to do that as well. And Dapper already takes care of that as far as I can see. And then they also have a very, very strong observability push inside Dapper. So it includes a lot of instrumentation, Prometheus built-in support. And then finally, they also support a lot of resiliency. So if there are failed requests, they have the ability to retry requests and things like that. So a lot of stuff that we would need to implement anyways, they already have. And then on top of that, we get the support of a very large community, and then a lot of other integrations that go beyond Redis. So I'm leaning towards having Dapper be our main cache provider for HA scenarios. And then we would recommend users use Redis as the provider that integrates with Dapper. And there is a precedence for this too, because Gatekeeper just actually merged their support for Dapper, and they also recommend using Dapper with Redis for their pub sub implementation. So I think alignment wise, we have that there too. So I'm leaning towards we use Dapper and then use Redis as the preferred provider with Dapper.
Thanks for the explanation, Akash. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's discuss more. But yeah, I think it's a little bit tight to try to get all of HA into V1. So we should definitely try to narrow down what we want for V1 and what can we experiment flag and we can. So we can have a additional discussion on this.
Luis, just on topic of the timeline, I want to talk about the 908 on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some investigation to see what does it take to break the certificate store into the own pluggable model. And I think Binbin had previous conversations with Feynman, so I want to check are we in the same line of thought? So I've left some notes. Oh, thanks, Binbin. I see you've added a comment. Binbin, I feel we can probably make a dynamic plugin a feature across all plugins. I see. So today with the plugin model, we have the store and the verifier that we provide an interface, and users can bring their own process that the executor can call, and they communicate through standard in and standard out. So if we want to follow the same model for certificate store, I'm guessing instead of standard in and standard out, we would be switching to using gRPC calls. Since it's like a long living process, I think it'll be the executor invoking on the reconcile, the sub-process will go fetch the certificates, and on verify, the executor gets the certificates from the client, the server of the gRPC server in this case. And then they will have to share certificates some way. So the other question for Akash is, do you recommend using some of the cache utilities that we'll be building versus like, do we go back to the provider writing to disk so the verifier can read it from disk to that model? So first question on the gRPC, like, are we in agreement using gRPC as like the protocol between communicating between the certificate store provider and the executor?
So would this mean that we would have, for at least for some time, while the store and verifier don't support gRPC, we would have like a certificate store would support gRPC and then the others would still be on standard in and out? So we're introducing like another way of doing it? Or is the proposal that we upgrade the entire flow for all external plugin interaction to all be gRPC, and then after that we build in certificate store support with gRPC?
So I think gRPC brings the benefits like easier to debug and all that, but it'll be I think the ultimate goal can be we're going to gRPC like all in, just removing standard in and standard out. But of course the process would be iterative, like we're going to build this new thing, a certificate store, that communication will be gRPC, and then we're going to move our existing verifier and store from standard in and out to gRPC. But then again, this is the timeline, the backwards compatibility. Do we need to introduce feature flag? So yeah, question on timeline. And this itself is a bigger work item, right? Like we're doing the infra for the gRPC calls between the plugin model and the executor. This would be, like, I also have another question on the agenda, like which components should be pluggable versus which components would be just like, you have to implement it in Ratify core. At the moment, I'm thinking like anything that requires like various implementation, like the KMS, any sort of certificate provider, each cloud would need to implement their own, or each vault out there, like that makes sense to be a pluggable model, because not necessarily everyone want to develop in the Ratify repository and need to build with the Ratify core. But what about HA? Like Feynman was saying, like, does it need to be cloud agnostic? Which part of it needs to be cloud agnostic? I just want to have the discussion, like, what is our requirement, or what's our rule for this needs to be pluggable, this is okay to be in the core?
One question, if other cloud provider, they want to introduce their cert store, so currently, I mean, is it possible, or because I see we have inline cert store, right? And we also have an example for Azure as a cloud provider. So for other provider, so if they develop their own CRDs, will that work? Or we need to.
So
For example, yeah, for example, Amazon just announced the AWS Signer, right? So it's possible that they just write a CRD so that Ratify can read the cert from that CRD.
Yeah, so if they want to introduce a new CRD, they will have to implement it. And they will have to implement it. The question is, where would they implement it? Do they want to implement it in a different repository or bring it down dynamically, like similar to the dynamic pluggable verifiers and store? Or they'll have to come to the Ratify repository and build with the Ratify image. But if you want to fetch from a new different sort of store, someone will have to provide the implementation. But if we make it into a pluggable model, then that implementation can live in a different repository. Versus right now, our implementation, or if you want to interact with the new store, the implementation would live in the Ratify repository and will build with the base image. Does that answer the question, Yi?
Yeah, I see the point. So so they are still need some coding work, right? Not only
Yes.
the create a new CRD. Okay, and that coding part, if we don't do the change, that code needed to be landed in the Ratify repo. So that means we combine some provider solution together, right?
There will be like a component. Currently, we have a component that read from the inline, like it gets that string and converts it into a certificate and then puts it in memory. The AKV provider knows how to talk to the Azure Key Vault. In the past, like we've said, oh, Jimmy, if we were to fetch certificate from AWS, then you will have to implement, or someone will have to implement the component to talk to the AWS certificate provider. And he wasn't opposed to that idea. It's just we didn't really get there.
Okay. I think I see the point of this issue, but I also see that we need further discussion from I think from the V1 scope point of view. I mean the current setup is good. But if we want to do this, as you mentioned, it's a big item, right? So, and if we do it later, it will maybe introduce some breaking changes. So
Yeah,
I think maybe we need more time to discuss it.
Right. So I think this also fits well with the experimental flag approach. I think one of the drivers of this specific item was also because I think Feynman had mentioned that one HashiCorp to like support here as well, and then basically getting that we would need to do something similar to this or like implement it ourselves, right? And so I think
I just want to clarify with the experimental flag. E, from your point of view, like, do we introduce an experimental flag when there's a change in customer experience or when there's a change in implementation detail? Like for something like this, it's like the user would still define their CR. They will say, this is my vault, this is the properties of the vault, this is the name of the certificate. So it's just the interaction between the key core executor have changed when it talks to the certificate provider. Like if we introduce a feature flag, do we support both paths? It'll be like, depending on if this feature flag is on, if it's on, we spin up a new gRPC server. If not, we spin up our internal little in-memory certificate. Is that how you see it?
That's I think that's a different. I think that's two options that the customer can choose. So if we do want have this pluggable design, but currently it is not ready. So this feature flag is targeting to this feature, but we will deprecate the old solution, right? So once this feature is out and stable, we will deprecate the old solution, right?
Okay, so it's like a deprecation
We don't
process.
support
We only have to
two-
support one
two-
at a time.
Yeah, we don't support the two options, right? So once we, let's say we get this pluggable design out, so we will only support this way, right?
So, but I mean, wouldn't that be breaking existing customers?
Yeah, that's my question. If we do it later, it will break the current experience, because if we have V1 shaping the existing solution, then we have to maintain it and provide a way for customer to mitigate it, right? So
Do we
so
have
that's- yeah.
do we have guidelines in terms of how long do we need to maintain a deprecated feature in the OSS world?
I think
Like-
if we have a breaking change, we needed to release a major version.
I see, but
Yeah.
is there like a specific time? Like I know certain companies have like, let's say like 3 months or like 3 years that they need to sort of let their customers know there's a breaking change so that they can actually move to new versions or new APIs.
There is I think there is the deprecation window, but I don't know the best practice now, how much time we need to provide it to our user, and the user during the deprecation window, user can use some way to migrate to the new solution, then we can deprecate the old one.
Gotcha. I see Feynman has his hand up.
Yeah, regarding the maintenance cadence, I see a lot of communities which are maintain the latest version and the maybe previous, maybe the last 1 or 2 versions. I think like Kubernetes, they maintain their latest 3, the last 3 versions, and notation and Auras maintain the latest and the last version. For example, Aura Scope maintains the stable V1 and also V2. So back to the pluggable design, I would like to provide some source and purpose benefits of this idea. So it originates from the scenario of when we want to integrating a new source store like HashiCorp Vault. We want to read the certificate stored in HashiCorp Vault, but this is just an example. So at that moment, I find that it requires users to have some additional development in the Ratify core repository, the code repo, to support the new HashiCorp Vault source store. Then users will be able to configure the source store in the verification process. Without that, it is very hard to users to implement that plugin or that source store. So if we don't have this implementation in Ratify, so in the future, if a new vendor comes in and they said, I want to support another ABC source store, so we need to prepare a new release and add the code to the Ratify core base, the core repo, and cut a new release for that. But if we can decouple the logics, the plugin logics from the Ratify core repo, and in that way, users just need to develop and design their plugin implementation out of the core repo of Ratify. And I think it might be the same as the dynamic plugin mentioned by Susan and Bing in this issue. I think the overall goal is to decouple the logics of plugin design and implementation from the core repo, and make users can develop there and integrate any plugins out of the core source code repo. And we don't need to wait for a long time if users want to integrate or consume another plugin.
Yeah, thanks, Payman. I think the purpose of this is clear, and we out of time now. It's just the plan, and if we want to do it post V1, then it could involve some breaking change or deprecation. So it's meaning about how we can land this issue. The purpose, I think it is clear. I do think we need more time to discuss, but I need to to drop for another meeting.
Yeah.
So Feynman and E, are we thinking this would be a post V1 item?
I think we can discuss further offline. Is that okay?
Yeah. So we can use this thread to discuss as well.
Yep.
But this is a smart design principle, especially when you're talking about dynamic plugin. We can discuss it and elaborate more on the dynamic plugin design principle and see if it's worth for us to introduce before or after V1.
So we already have a dynamic plugin support. It's hidden behind a feature flag. If we were to make it available in V1, we also have to think about verification of signatures of the plugin that's downloaded from the wild internet.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely more to discuss here. We're unfortunately out of time for today. So let's continue discussion offline or on the issues that have been logged. But appreciate everyone, and thanks everyone.
Thanks for driving this, Louise.
No worries.
I hope the animal is safe.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're thinking of the animals.
I'm sure they were good, taken care of.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.